warm welcome to Humanity Rising and this 740th edition and session on the Humanity Rising platform. And this is a platform, as many of you know, that really is a catalyst for change and a hub for conversations that can both ignite change, ignite action, and also inspire and educate. And it's a pleasure for me, Sabinia von Gafka, to be here today to facilitate and navigate us through today's conversation. Today, we're going to learn about another really exciting project called the EARTHwise Game for Civilizational Transformation. And this is a blockchain game that is going to include real-life challenges and transformation quests, as well as open world immersive action game with the latest blockchain technology. There's also ethical AI integrations, GameFi Web3 tools. And even though you might not all of you understand these terminologies or buzzwords, you'll definitely do at the end of this session. But it is a platform and a game that will be able to help people transform their lives, or at least be able to step up and become agents of change and contribute to a more thriving world. And it's a pleasure for us to have with us today the co-founder of this, I would say, ecosystem, because you have EARTHwise Constitution, where the EARTHwise Game is one of the impacts of the EARTHwise Constitution. And Dr. Anneloes Smitsman, who herself is a futurist, she's a systems scientist, an entrepreneur, award-winning pioneer in human development and systems change, and also a best-selling author. And she's going to be joined by three colleagues, or three stewards for EARTHwise, the EARTHwise Game, to really enlighten us what this can mean, what it can entail, and to see if you all out there can also be incentivized to join. And with that, I say a warm welcome to today's speaker, that is Dr. Anneloes, who is joining us today. A warm welcome, Anneloes.
Thank you so much. And what an amazing introduction. I feel like you've summarized everything. This is great.
And I have a lot of questions later, but I hand over the word to you.
Fantastic, fantastic. So for everyone also here who has joined, we're delighted that you are with us in a game-changing conversation, because that's really what it is all about for us. And before I share more about the technical aspects of the game and what we're seeking to do, I wanna actually go first to the heart and very much to the root of why are we doing this. Yeah? Some of you know us already from EARTHwise Center in terms of providing leadership and governance and training and coaching. So you may be wondering, why now suddenly a game? So actually I want to make that really personal. So I am a mother of two teenage boys, and my boys love gaming, and they have been for a while. But I've very often been concerned that although they seem to be having a great fun with their friends and strategizing, I don't see that in the games that they're playing, that they're really helping them to shift their consciousness, to get ready for the future that is coming, to feel empowered to take action. And that's not just for their age group in terms of youth, but the same thing also for young adults. So for a long time, I've been looking for alternatives. I thought, okay, there's got to be a game there that really empowers them to be game changers in the world, to really get ready to apply their genius, to further explore and develop their future human potential. And in particular, to go through a game where you have these different civilizations that they can explore, simulations of both collapse trajectories of the kind of decisions and actions that we need to change, but also to explore the future possibility of a more evolved humanity, a greater enlightened society. And to my sadness, I couldn't find those games. I found many games that have little elements in it, but I didn't find a game that really combines all of that. And moreover, a game that also helps us to change the dominant game dynamics of our world. And we'll be going into that a little bit later. So after a lot of reflection and a lot of searching, it started to dawn on me that perhaps this is really from EARTHwise our call to take on, because I truly believe that we need to have that possibility to empower youth, to empower young adults, and in fact, to empower all of us, because there are so many wonderful things about gamification, and I, as a system scientist myself, where a lot of the science that you do is working with complexity. I noticed that people don't like complexity very much, and in fact, if you present them with complex problems, very often people say, "Well, that's too much, or it's too complicated. Please simplify it." However, if you put complexity in a game, people love that. And why is this so important for addressing the sustainability crisis that we're in right now? Is because the sustainability crisis itself is a hugely complex problem. And what it means is that we have many interdependent, interlinked issues. And if we are coming with very simplistic or superficial solutions or strategies, we often cause a lot more harm without realizing that. And this is also why applying a gamifying approach in order to become both aware of the complexity of what we're in right now, as well as in a gamifying way to strategize, collaborate, coordinate for solving those complex challenges while growing our humanity, while growing our consciousness, is, I believe, one of the tipping points to take on. So in our intention also in developing this EARTHwise game for civilizational transformation, we're also doing this to help create a new pattern, a new case study, even an ecosystem for how we can approach that, and that it can inspire then the development and evolution and perhaps even the upshifting of all those other hundreds and thousands of games that are out there to set a higher standard for what we are expecting from gaming and gamification. So having said that, I would like to share a couple of slides with you all. So the first image that you are looking at here is actually where players will be entering. So we just want to present, see we are in the early stages of developing the first prototype of the game so that we can truly start to try it out as an open world immersive action game, also with NFT cards that weaves in real life challenges and quests as well. And we also are looking to integrate AI in order to together, through conscious decision making and alignment for collective well-being, actually create a better AI. So what you're seeing here is the tree of life in the story, and you're seeing in here the earth within the tree of life and the importance of all the potentials of the tree of life. And you have here 4 branches that are representing the 4 worlds in the game that are needing to converge in order to bring about the great quintessence. And the quintessence represents really how we become the upgrade code for evolving and shifting, how we play the game of life on planet Earth. And you're seeing now also these little straps, these little ropes there, and that represents also a way of bootstrapping humanity to a thrivable future. And that comes from our intention to saying, well, how can we take together and bring together the best of who we are and all this amazing talent from around the world, all these incredible people who really do want to make a difference, and now coordinate and align that talent to be able to also co-create and develop this game so it becomes a game for humanity by humanity. So let us go deeper into this now. So as Sabine also said, it is about creating real world impact through gaming. And when I was going through the statistics, so how many people are actually playing games around the world, I was astonished to find out there were over 3 billion gamers worldwide, and the majority of them are, in fact, young adults. So this is also, as I explained earlier, about a tremendous sense, as well as opportunity, as well as responsibility, that we need to do something about that. We need to really offer them a different way, a different alternative that really empowers them. Especially right now, if we're looking in our planetary tipping points, last week saw the 3 hottest days ever measured on record. So from sustainability perspective, I'm well aware that the time of these planetary tipping points, we have entered into that now. Scientists all over the world have warned for this for a long time. but we're actually in that time right now when these tipping points are starting to activate. But we also have social tipping points, and social tipping points can go in a positive, generative, transformative direction, or it can lead to collapse, and it can lead to war and to violence. And we really want players in the game to be aware of that, to really be aware how they together can form a social tipping point for collective transformation. And that's just also why we are blending together all these immersive technologies with consciousness enhancing narratives for our personal and collective transformation, that with one very, very specific intention, and that is to become aware of the harmful game dynamics of our world. And I want to say a little bit more about it. And if you, in fact, what you're seeing here on the screen, this giant with the tree and his big horns, what that represents in our story, the ancient archetype of Moloch. And let us go into that a little bit further here. So Moloch used to be an ancient god who thrived on child sacrifices, and it symbolized this Moloch game dynamic symbolized these very self-destructive behaviors of mainstream systems and institutions that sacrifice long-term collective well-being for short-term personal gain. So if we're looking at our climate crisis, our biodiversity crisis, we could even say a crisis in human consciousness. If we're looking at that from a gaming perspective, then what we could in fact see is underlying that there are very specific game dynamics that I would say are thousands and thousands of years old, perhaps even 6,000 years old, at the very beginning of the empire building. And what we're seeing with those specific game dynamics economically, politically, socially, even educationally, is that there is a massive, massive misalignment between both personal and collective well-being and also short-term and long-term decision-making, as well as massive coordination to really bring together the resources and the actions and the solutions that are necessary for addressing the greatest challenges of our time. And so we could bring that back to as a kind of Moloch game dynamic. And what we want players to be aware of, but even for all of us who are co-developing and co-creating this game, is that Moloch game that always is seeking for us to compromise, to sacrifice something for a quick gain, or giving up a part of yourself, sacrificing your values. It's always going on. It's always there in the background. And very often the very institutions that have taken it upon themselves to help solve the sustainability crisis or help transition our societies to post-carbon, they themselves are caught in those Moloch game dynamics. They're actually promoting it. And currently with AI amplifying that, this is not helping us. And that's why in this game, the first thing that players become aware of is that they have to become the upgrade codes for the Moloch game dynamics. They need to align their decision-making and create a different pattern. And by upgrading Moloch, they can then unlock both their personal and collective potential for actually starting to create a thriving and planetary civilization. So they become the new codes. They become really the codes of our future human potential of an emerging planetary civilization. You could say they become the codes and the imaginal cells of a more evolved humanity. But by first becoming aware of this Moloch game dynamic and who they are within that and what it means both for their personal lives as well as what's happening out there in society. So the game is also, of course, designed to create a lot of positive impact. I won't be going through the details here. We will be sharing the slides later, and you can see this also on our website. But it is indeed empowering people for actions for climate and biodiversity, empowering younger generations, also empowerment of women and girls. A lot of us as women have been really at the founding here of the new narratives that are necessary, but also creating whole new in-game economies for collective thriving. And this is where we want to set a standard for a new business model, merging together the best of non-profit, for-profit, and in this whole emerging new field of organizational change, which is really led by the DAO movement. We'll be hearing a little bit from Domenic about that as well, who is with me today. And that's all about decentralized autonomous organizations using blockchain technology in order to give people the tools to coordinate and align our collective intelligence potential in a really impactful, prosperous way. Also, what we seek to do with the game is that the in-game economies that are helping players to create revenue through the game for their projects, so that as you're playing, you're not just playing to earn, but you're playing to earn, to empower the very ideas that you want to be bringing forward that are emerging from the collective intelligence of the game that really help to solve those enormous challenges that we are up against right now, but that we can solve with the right strategies. And it is based on our EARTHwise Constitution. So for those of you who don't know what this is about, we launched this last year. It's a constitution for planetary civilization, which has really come about by asking ourselves, if we were to imagine that we've made it through, that as a species we've evolved, we've understood that we can only evolve by collaborating in a way that we've never done before, by understanding how we are each diverse expressions of this deeper unity of life. And if that humanity, that consciousness, that planetary consciousness, understanding who we are within the larger web of life, starts to co-create a new civilization, how would it look like? How would we do economy and governance and education and learning together? And this is how this document came about. All of it is based on the wisdom and also evolutionary capacities of living systems. So putting the living systems of the universe that have evolved over billions of years really at the forefront also of design and systemic transformation. It's already been endorsed by over 50 organizations. More and more people are joining. It is completely free, open source, available for all of you to work with. And the beauty of this constitution is instead of having to endorse it as if it's a static document that's just made by others, it really serves to inspire us. In other words, you can co-create your own version of it for your movement, for your organization, even for your life. So it really serves to take a constitutional approach to go through the personal as well as the collective transformations that our Earth is asking from us right now. And it therefore also serves as the framework and the architecture for the game. You're seeing on this image 13 living systems protocols that we're applying all the time to also guiding the players. What does it mean to create net positive solutions, net positive to nature, to really contribute value? And how do we actually prioritize and know what are the right decisions to make in the face of Moloch game dynamics that at every step of the way will try to undermine who we are, who we can be together, and our transformative potential. So this is also, this compass will be part of the avatar suit also of the players, but we also use this compass ourselves every step of the way now as a team to decide what conversation do we want to be in with potential funders. If people are offering, for example, funding support, which we need for the game, what are our conditions? What's the difference here between stewardship or people who are demanding ownership or even IP? So living into all of those questions to really set a new model also of what's the role of money here, and that we don't want money to be ruling, but that we are directing and stewarding the positive qualities of finance as well in a new model, in a new regenerative, thrivable economic and financial model. And underlying the gaming platforms are DAOs, and these are decentralized organizations, as I said earlier, using blockchain technology that allow us to code it as well, to program it. So we can really program our DAO, and Hi-Fi is our core and lead partner for our DAO development, and we can code it therefore also on the basis of the constitution. So here just a quick snapshot of the DAO from inside, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more with my friends who are here, who've joined us from our team. What I'd like to say here as well, as a beautiful practical example of application of the constitution, we have now also applied the same protocols, the same compass from the EARTHwise Constitution to a HIFA DAO Constitution. So where DAO, HIFA is our lead technical partner for developing and deploying the game through DAOs, but also making DAOs available, for example, for projects that players are coming up with. You'll see now the same DNA in the architecture is also in the constitution for HIFA as a DAO, which has its own beautiful constitution, are based on living systems. And that means that there is this deep coherence and integrity, that the very technology that we are using also to be able to scale has a constitutional basis. And that we're using the same compass and we are aligning ourselves on the same deeper vision for a planetary civilization. And I think with that, I think this is a great time to bring my friends here on board. Stephen Lovink was here, was also an incredible entrepreneur and has been living into those questions for a very long time about financial integrity, how to create flows for life. So I'd love to bring Stephen here as also a steward for everything that we are doing, as well as Janice Hall, also steward, also for the Constitution. And she's an amazing weaver. She holds both in the spectrum of the indigenous wisdom principles, as well as having worked in communication, in marketing, and leadership for a very long time, and brand development. So she really understands what it means to be communicating from that integrity. And Domenic Thomas as well, incredible blockchain-based entrepreneur, but in his earlier career actually came from natural health and well-being and acupuncture. So I'd say Domenic really specializes in finding the acupuncture points now of our large and new technology systems, and how do we apply that, and incredible experience in blockchain development, and also here to represent our lead technical partner, HIFA. So is it possible to bring them here with me next to me? And then I would really like Stephen perhaps to share with us a little bit first about your, I'd almost say, lifelong commitment also as an entrepreneur, Stephen, and the many conversations that we are having about what do we need to see change from ownership to stewardship, flows for life at the heart of finance and economic systems. And therefore, you know, why you feel so passionate about this game and what we're doing through the game to change these dominant games.
Thank you, Anneloes. Yes, quite a long journey. But what I really like about the Constitution is that in this moment of our history, we are met with so many challenges. And it really poses that question, don't we need to reconstitute ourselves in harmony with life? And I think that our financial business models have basically been maximizing profits to the extent that it threatens life on our planet. So we need to do something with it. And I've been looking at, how can we think differently about creating successful ventures and projects and initiatives that create flow for life. Nothing wrong with making profits, but align it with life. Make sure that it nurtures life. The great thing I think about the game initiative is that if we just dream together for a moment, and we dream this game into one of the more successful games around the world that everybody plays, mind you, by 2025, I think close to almost 50% of the world population is actually in that category of youngsters that play the game. So we have right there a tipping point together with women and other groups that are concerned about the future of life. We have a tremendous opportunity to create empowered potential to literally change the game of life. And right now, the game we're playing is rather anthropic. We're slowly dying. We have to let go of things that don't work. and we have to usher in the new, the prototypes that can make things work. And that is where lots of creativity can be unleashed through games for change, through this EARTHwise Game approach, which will be looking at how we can collaborate to uncover the tipping point projects that we need to invest in and where we need to direct flow for life. And so maybe I'll stop there and leave it to the others. But it's very exciting, all this.
Thank you so much. Yes. Janice, I'd love to hear your wisdom. And after that, Domenic, yes. You're muted as well. Just unmute yourself. Yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all wherever you are. As you can see behind me, I'm sitting right in the middle of the game of life here for a planetary civilization. It's very exciting to me to be part of all of this because I myself have studied systems biology and evolutionary biology, and I've based my business consulting for the past, I started my business in 1990, Natural Network International, and I'm a synergistic ecosystem business builder, and I've based my business building and consulting on evolutionary biology because I feel like we are, until we recognize that we are intricately interdependent with life, we cannot really build a synergistic and thrivable world in the future. And so I've been building my business model on evolutionary coherent business, basing it on biomimicry and using the natural world as a compass for building business. And everything really is business, everything. You know, there's the business of life, there's the business of business, and then there's ecosystem business. And as our current model of government dissolves, it really offers us an opportunity to build a new one. Systems are dissolving everywhere in the world. And I've been working with Anneloes since 2020, I guess, the beginning of 2020. And I've been very enthusiastic to help, and she's a great guide to help us each find our authentic role in the ecosystem of the new Earth, because we all have one. Each and every one of us. And there isn't one that's too small or too big. If you look at the systems of life, you've got the little ants, and you've got the sky, and you've got the rain, and you've got the ocean, and the bees, those little bees that pollinate. Each and every part of the system is intricately important for the whole system to work. And I think what happens now is that people are feeling disempowered because they recognize that everything is changing. And unlike many of the people who watch Humanity Rising and are involved in these game-changing worlds, there are a lot of people who are really searching. And their hearts are telling them that something is changing. And I think COVID was a really important part of this because people either binged on Netflix maybe, or they started asking the question, who am I? Why am I here? And what do I do next? So people are searching. And this is why I believe the EARTHwise Constitution provides a beautiful and inclusive umbrella under which we can co-create and collaborate and each find our authentic place in the ecosystem of the new Earth. There are 16 pledges, which I encourage you to look up, and maybe Anneloes will go over them. And there is a role for each and every person within that pledge. Find a pledge that you can embody, and that's your beginning journey for finding your role in the ecosystem of the new Earth. And what I also see is the Constitution provides us, and I'm going to use my background in business and marketing, brand coherence. Because the reason that people buy Coca-Cola or McDonald's or those crazy brands, the Moloch brands that are out there that are sucking the lifeblood out of us, is because they really have developed brand coherence. And so we as a civilization need to we need to develop our own brand coherence, meshing with one another, working as a harmonious,
Yes.
harmonious whole. And regardless of the medium, every message, every work, every step that we take in the world is part of this. And so we need to be more conscious. Mentioning very quickly Indigenous, I am very blessed to work with a lot of different Indigenous people around the world. It's not something that I ever chose to do. It's like life drafted me for this. And as my last name is Hall, I seem to be a very good connector. And so in working with Indigenous First Nation people, Aboriginal people, people in Tibet, South America, the Native Americans in North America, what has come up for me, as we all probably recognize and know, that 80% of the biodiversity on this planet is held in the hands of Indigenous people. Without them, we would have already fallen flat on our face. And they listen to their ancestors in real time, the same way that you're listening to me right now. And their ancestors are all telling them that it's time to release their Indigenous prophecies, their Indigenous knowledge, much of which they have held sacred in trust. And what's even more fascinating is that so many of these cultures, their prophecies are very, very similar. And they don't know each other. And they all point to now. So going back to the game, and then I'll end there, the game provides a real life opportunity for people to find their role. And whether it is even more and more adults are playing, but as we work intergenerationally with youth, which is really important, we must partner with the youth of the world and say, what do you need from us? And give them this model to step inside so we can play together and build something that really is thrivable for future generations. So I'll end with that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Janice, and for weaving all these different perspectives together, because Indigenous wisdom is very important to us and is also rooted in the EARTHwise Constitution. So yes, to all you shared. Domenic, I'd love to hear your voice and your wisdom.
Thank you, Anneloes. As I'm listening to everybody's conversations, the term integration and integrative comes up. That was something that, as you mentioned, in my career as an acupuncturist, I really worked to educate allopathic physicians, chiropractors, physical therapists, as many people as possible about the medicine that I was practicing, but also about the ways in which they would all work together. Oftentimes people come and they try to create a replacement, right? They go, no, now this, stop this, do this. And if we approach people with this sort of billy club approach of stop doing what you're doing completely and do this, that can feel very off-putting, very challenging, very alienating. And so the same thing can kind of happen with these sort of Web3 technologies sometimes, right? People feel like Web3 is this like thing, this cult that you join, and once you cross over, there's no going back. And it's like, it's just the technology. It's a back-end technology. I have no idea why my industry pushes it forward. You would never say, please join Facebook. We have the best, MongoDB databases in the world. No one would care. But it's an important technology for us. And why it's important to the game is that it's going to give us this layer of transparency, accountability. It's going to really enforce and reinforce these core values, right, of honesty and communication, really, right? Like everybody will be able to have access to the same information if they want it. In most instances, will people need it? No, probably not. Just be playing the game like anything else. You hardly notice what's going on in the background, but it will enable us to do some new things. Like, for example, this play to earn concept, right? We can share the value creation with everybody who's involved now. That's very difficult to do in the current environment, with a PlayStation, for example. I mean, knowing the bits I do know about our financial system, if Sony wanted to reward people for playing, the Madden football game, it would be a nightmare to send micropayments via like PayPal or something to 1 million people, right? We'll be able to do this seamlessly. It'll just happen while you're playing. Oh, I just accumulated a new, Uber token. I don't know. We don't have names for things yet, but oh, great. I just accumulated a new token. That's wonderful. I'll be able to use that in the store. I'll be able to use that maybe for other goods and services from some of our partners. We can completely revitalize and revamp the way in which we interact with one another financially too, which is, I think, a super important part. Anneloes and I have talked about this, extensively. There's this very, money-focused approach in the U.S., right? That's where I live. And, we practically worship money as if it's a god, right? That's our Moloch, right? Like for sure in the United States. And so we need to, re-examine that relationship for people to get healthier with the way they relate financially. And again, that's another way that this technology is going to enable that, these sort of micro payments and other things. And then there's, the HiFiDAO software, which is the organization that I'm working for, doing business development. And we've really enabled this platform that allows you to engage in collective decision-making, come to agreements like never before, across stakeholders all over the world. You can really organize yourselves in a way that's truly democratic and allow everybody to engage in decision making, but also have, again, everything transparent out in the open. There's no secret agreements, right? There's no more secrets. If you want to know how much I make from HiFiDAO, you can go right now and find out. Look up my profile. You'll see my current agreement in the system that was voted on by my peers. There it is. It is what it is, right? It's all open. It's all transparent, and it's giving everybody an opportunity to engage at a much deeper level. And then by virtue of this, we end up fulfilling the vision of this game, which was so attractive to me. And when you hear it, it's like, oh yeah, of course. But, I hadn't heard it before. And when Anneloes described this to me, I just went, that's it. Meet people where they are, right? You hear that in business all the time and in communication, but we need to get the message. But at the same time, what I think is incredibly innovative is it's not only going to be about education, it's going to also be about problem solving, because there's going to be an opportunity for people in game to examine these questions and put forth solutions that we may have never heard of before. So the creativity that this can unleash, the collective sense making, the collective intelligence is unprecedented. I mean, really, I don't think you can overstate that, how powerful this engine is. And then what I believe it will influence and support is more and more and more people doing similar things, right? We'll get this sort of revolution in gaming over time where people go, oh, right? It's like when businesses first grappled with the internet, they didn't know what to do. And then they put up a website, and then they started playing with social media, right? Like, I think this is the next step. People are going to go, oh, I need to get my message through gaming. Now, of course, there's already plenty of commercial messaging in gaming. We certainly hope there won't be an increasing flood of that, but you could see maybe nonprofits, right, starting to partner with games because there's a alignment of the nonprofit mission and the game content or the game story or the game's, world or whatever. And so it's really unlimited. We could just go on for hours. I'll stop there, but I appreciate everybody's support, and it's a really exciting journey to be on. So I thank you, Anneloes, for that, and everyone else at EARTHwise. I appreciate you. Very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Domenic. I'm really delighted that you're with us on this journey, because that's also the mission that we're all saying here. What can we do together that nobody of us can do alone? And that is the great game that changes the game. Sibinji, I would love to hear from you, and I see there's some questions already from the audience.
Well, first of all, I mean, wow, I think, and I know also some people in the chat have expressed this. I mean, this vision is also something that and I know many others have envisioned. I've long since, before Web3 became a buzzword, talked about ecosystems, or talked about how can we create, the game of life, where we can incentivize people, nearly each and every day, to really help us navigate this transition and navigate at understanding sustainability and becoming more conscious, but at the same time doing it in a playful manner that also sparks our creativity. And it's really both exciting but also really inspirational to hear how far you've come in that thought trail, and to actually consolidate now, even though it's on a prototype level, but really find the mechanics, because that's also one of the traits, and also the difficult part is to find all the mechanics of how you can actually provide in-game mechanics for this and so forth. So it's, I'm really excited about following this. And now, I mean, trying to find questions for all four of you, I'm going to, before I start to sort of give you my questions, I'm going to check in our chat, because some people are very Web3 orientated and others, of course, not. So a lot of these words like Web3, DAOs, blockchain, GameFi and so forth are new for people. So trying to sort of funnel that down so that it doesn't become too complicated. Well, one question from Shannon, which is maybe more on target, is can we see the game in action? But I presume, I mean, is there a trailer, or is there any sort of like first initial story?
No, we are really developing the prototype. Yes. So we hope to, if we're successful in our fundraising, please support the crowdfunding with the link there. Then it will only take a couple of months. But yes, we are in the middle of our fundraising for that. And this is why we are approaching the way that we're going about the game also at different levels. One is the conversation of the game that we're all in. So understanding that we are already in a game, we're just not conscious of it. So, and this is where the EARTHwise pledges help us to actually play for Earth by becoming aware, what game are you in? What are you supporting? How are you a future creator? For which possibility? And then the prototype is for developing, of course, all the technical game aspects, game loops, game mechanics. Yeah. But how we are going about this whole journey is not to staying only stuck at that level of technology, but really seeing the technology as one layer. So to me, the game in action, therefore, to answer that question, is not just at the level of the prototype or how you play your NFT in the game card mechanics, but it's also the game in action is, for example, how are we right now bringing the best of our different capacities and organizations together to create an ecosystem, not just for one game, but that this can inspire many more games. In fact, that's also one of the intentions. And we want to be able to build out, for those of you who know Roblox, for example, there's an incredible diversity with Roblox games that are building off the code. So we would actually want to see that. Just like that is the spirit of the EARTHwise Constitution, that it inspires many more different constitutions, but based on that living systems wisdom, just like nature does. If you're looking at the beautiful way in which nature, all these beautiful seeds creates all that diversity. So that to me, and that comes back also if somebody was to ask me, what would success mean in this situation? It would not mean that we have this very successful open world immersive action game. Yes, great, but success would mean that we are in a different conversation about everything about gaming, that we've set a different standard for the gaming industry, that we say we're not okay anymore. We want to demonstrate here that games can empower and not make our kids addicted, or young adults addicted. We're done with our game of extraction. It's about the game for collective thriving. So, yes.
No, but playing the game, life is in one sense composed. It is mechanics of a game. So this is sort of like doing a digital twin where we can actually, find that version, learn from there, and then implement that in the life that we're living and getting inspired. A question here from Carlos, which says, which is to Anneloes, but I mean, anyone can answer. Do you think it's possible to use this WISE game in an educational program for climate action for students between 14 to 18 years old? I'm working in Chile in a program with school communities in the south of the country, which is, of course.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we want this also to be widely accessible for schools. I've done a lot of work in climate education at schools and training teachers and students. And a lot of the games that we did were actually systems games, playing out different systems, helping students to become aware of the interdependency of the systems. The beauty with the game is you can make this immersive now. So the technologies that we're now having to explain, what does it mean to be living in an interdependent world? What does it mean to be with complexity? What does, for example, from a sustainability perspective, what does thresholds and allocations and planetary boundaries and social ceilings, which everything to do with climate change, we can make that very concrete by students and teachers also joining in that game to address how are we working, for example, if you're saying we have this energy transition that we need for the post-carbon economy, but what is the resource nexus of that? Play that out in a game. What are the rare minerals that are needed for your ideas around solar panels? If you're saying electric cars, what does that mean again for the intensity on rare minerals and metals? And how are we getting those? In the Moloch, it will tell you, well, don't worry, just go mine in Africa. Yeah, I am in Mauritius right now. This is where we are based. We're part of the African region. Well, we've been seeing what that game means. Going all renewable, wonderful in the Western world, and mining it over here, yeah, and the geopolitical consequences of that. So yes, this is absolutely something that we can also use in education, as well as we said, we want a lot of this to be open source code that can be further developed by other people as well. So that if you are an educator and you love this, you want to be part of that, how can you build your own game of that for your unique purposes and context?
I mean, amazing. And I just want to be able to bring Janice and Domenic and Stephen into the conversation. I mean, is there anything that you want to add, sort of looking, I mean, of course, out of an educational perspective, that this can be implemented, I mean, both in the educational system. I mean, in a sense, we're talking governance in the long run, so it's also affecting the political system, but maybe that's another sort of discussion. But is there anything out of your perspectives? I mean, you not all of you sort of are from the gaming world, but sort of diving into that and also seeing how you can utilize this kind of new way of gaming, but also a new financial structure. So if I maybe start with you, Domenic, because you were sort of talking a lot about, let's look at sort of the financial system and also what that entails with sharing value creation. Maybe go into that a bit, play to earn, play to learn, and so forth.
Yes, absolutely. There's the quick answer is it's unlimited, right? As I was responding to Kathleen in the chat, she was suggesting that, her understanding of the current gaming environment is very much focused on sort of violence and, this intense competition and all these other things. And I think the games mimic the world at this point, right? That's the easy way to go when you create, right? Is to build something that people already understand and already know. That's the simple way to do things in business. It's very difficult to innovate. However, what I think is interesting about the game is that if the games mimic the world, why couldn't they be aspirational and inspirational? So long as the game experience is still enjoyable and full of excitement and all these other things, we can be aspirational. But in that sense, every part of our game will be teaching, really. And that might sound crazy, but it is. I mean, nothing's going to be built that isn't intentional. There's going to be an economic model, and it's very much going to be about cooperative value creation as opposed to competitive value extraction, right? As you're playing the game, you're not going to be rewarded for taking from others in the game or vanquishing others or whatever, right? The more you cooperate, the more you build team solutions, the more community even, we've talked about some of that like, they'll likely form in-game communities over time. This is pretty normal in this type of game. And so, they'll be rewarded for doing that. And it's a different paradigm. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday who's a longstanding engineer, guy who was in his 70s, and he was so interesting is how he was talking about these new financial models and how we almost have to do like the reverse of what we're doing now, and he was talking about how everything comes from top down, macro to local. And he's saying, we just have to reverse it. And so he's interested in the DAO because he wants to create a series of local economies that then communicate via the macro so that we have a shared understanding and we can have trade, but the bulk of it is happening here. And I think that's an important lesson that could come from our game too.
And Stephen, and also I'm going to ask or include Janice, but Stephen, I'm also thinking with your sort of background, I mean, I know you've worked both as a senior advisor for the Institute of the Environmental Secretary in The Hague and Planet 2025 Network and so forth, and also sort of worked with system breakthrough initiatives to transform finance and grow true wealth. What do you see, I mean, apart from the apparent that we talked about now, that this kind of financial model through gaming can really contribute in the long run, both out of trying to find funding, of course, but also for individuals to learn, but also gain and do good?
I think, like many of us, we have been looking at the AI space and what that is going to change in the future, and there are different perspectives and views on all of this, but in essence, rather than looking at it as a threat, we with great responsibility, we can look at it as a tremendous opportunity to assist us to play the game in the right way. So in that sense, there's talk on the Hill and in other capitals of the world that we need a constitution for AI. And yes, we do. And it's about responsibility. And in all its simplicity, it is about the sort of life-giving constitutional principles that are written up in the EARTHwise Constitution. And that's going to change a lot. Also, if we just think about all of the fortunes that are going to be built in the AI space, and we would change something to the business model, and we would say, no, we cannot maximize profits. We really need to make sure that it ends up and gets allocated to the right places so that we solve our greatest challenges. It shouldn't get stuck somewhere bottled up in the system. That is how you get heart attacks, right? If it's clogged up, then the blood cannot flow to the life that it needs to sustain.
Very true. And I think that's, I mean, the ethical AI implementation and so forth is, such a vast area at the moment, because of course AI is one of our biggest and most exponential catalysts at this moment. I mean, it's existed for many generations, but that the way we can accumulate it, but at the same time, technology in the wrong hands or in the power and the power grid, it of course can have other effects. But sort of taking that ethical standpoint, Janice, you also talked a lot about it out of your sort of large wisdom of biomimicry, but also sort of evolutional coherent business and so forth, and creating this new ecosystem on Earth. What do you envision with this? And maybe for our viewers, how can this really play a part for them? Looking both to get educated and inspired, but also to accumulate assets, let's put it that way.
Well, I think one of the most important things to recognize is that we are all ancestors to the future, whether you have children or you don't have children, because we are all stardust, so to speak. And every action we take has a ripple effect to future generations. And as we all learn that we live in a quantum world and that we are all, the metaphor of the butterfly keeps popping up everywhere in the world, from the advanced to the in school these days. And as we sort of are all dissolving in our own primordial ooze as the humans of the past, we have an opportunity really to determine what we want to be in the future and recognize that it's radical collaboration that is going to help foster the kind of world we want. And the model of competition has to dissolve. The patriarchy is dissolving, and we're recognizing that the qualities of the rising feminine, which are embodied both in masculine and feminine, embodied in both men and women, are so important right now. And what I see, whether you're a gamer or not, this is an opportunity. If you don't believe you're ever going to be a gamer, what I encourage you to do is to really go, and I've put the link in the chat to the EARTHwise Constitution, and look at the 16 pledges, because these pledges allow you to take this game into life. And as I put here in the chat, climate and biodiversity, we have to engage with Gen Z, and this is a perfect opportunity. We have to learn as elders how to speak in their language and engage with social innovation that is emerging out of their generation, because they have a vision we don't have. You know, I remember growing up, I'm dating myself, putting my head under the desk to keep a nuclear bomb from blowing me up. I mean, I bought that story. But today, the children of today, the youth of today, and the young people today have a dissolving planet right in front of them, ecosystems that are dissolving right in front of them. And until we stop looking at nature as something we're going to fix, which a lot of the elders do, you know, the other problem is the silos. The SDGs are silos. Each silo is trying to fix their identified problem and their expertise, but a lot of the answers lie in the black holes between these silos, and this game provides that opportunity. The pledges on of the Constitution provide the opportunity for each and every person to find their role. Here's one, I'll just name a couple. Answer the call of my future human potential. What is calling you? That's what you have to follow. Apply that in co-creating everything you do. Pledge to invest what you put your money into and your time into impacts not just you, but future generations. So really think consciously, because this is about the maturation of human consciousness. And don't be shy about contributing your talents. And again, using living systems as your model. Always question, what out there in the world can I model from in a living system? Be part of nature. Recognize we don't fix nature. Until we become part of it, we work with nature. Nature wants to work with us. Nature is a living, breathing entity. We are a water planet, and water is the oldest living entity on the planet. Water has memory. Water listens. Water speaks. And so we can become the architect of a future that is co-creative. So never underestimate your own power. I think that is the key for all of this, because we each and every one of us have a voice, and we must raise it. We must raise it together.
So sort of funneling down and being a bit more maybe practical around the game. And Louise, if I turn to you. So first of all, how are you going to attract players? Because I mean, there are the gamers who are sort of in their sphere. And then, of course, there are the people who might not know about play to earn, but once they learn about play to earn, they find it interesting because you can play and you can earn. I mean, it's also because it's blockchain, crypto-based, token-based, and so forth. So what are sort of the players? Of course, you're looking for all across the world, but how are you going to sort of roll that dice initially?
First of all, it's working really with the kind of young stewards of the game themselves, so empowering them. And this will help, of course, when we're rolling out, when we're having first the launch of the prototype and the alpha testing of that and getting their input. So we really want to make sure that those younger players that are trying this out and piloting this that they feel they now become part of the game makers, not just the game changers, but also the game makers. So empowering them so they become the best advocates and spokespersons. Also, we have some initiatives going on where we want to present this also at the United Nations, especially given that it's coming out of Mauritius is a small island developing state, part of the African region. So there is that from an SDG and a climate action perspective. The game developers are based in Vietnam, and that's the collaboration we're having with them. So I think that's really beautiful to see that collaboration happening. So we really would like to have this presented as a case study at the United Nations. And so we are in conversation with some people around that, but also others who are listening here. If you know about that, please do help us. Then working also with media. So I'm in conversation with some PR companies who have already kind of taken interest on this, and to present not just the story in the mainstream media about the game itself as a whole innovative approach, but also that's what I believe is really newsworthy, is how we together are making and developing and deploying the game, and also sharing then the revenues coming out of that. That to me needs to be the game changer and the game story. So it's also working with, in particular, mainstream media. I think it's really important. I started doing that already last year when I was working with a PR company where some of this work featured in the International Business Times. There's an article coming out in The Guardian soon. So getting this out to mainstream media, that people know this is actually happening. It's not only always the stories about doomsday and everything in collapse. A good news story, of course, with educational institutions and schools. Also, we work with businesses as well. So that comes back to your earlier question. We do eventually want to develop a version also for businesses to become net positive, because we are giving trainings also worldwide in businesses in order to applying a living systems business model to become a net positive organization. So there's also that here. Of course, those with working with the governance. So yeah, we have a very diverse community, and then we have a whole community already of readers from some of the storytelling that's based on the game as part of our Future Humans trilogy, which I co-authored with my dear friend, Dr. Jean Houston. Those two books won also International Book Awards and became #1 bestsellers. So there's already a large community also of readers, where we spoke in the second book about the game. The main character in this book, Rose, she's actually very much the same age group as that we are targeting with the game. She's a young woman in her mid-20s. And she has this crazy idea to start developing a game when she starts to see this cosmic compass emerging in the middle of a nightmare. And she sees that out of the darkness of humanity always rises up when we feel, almost lost, like how are we going to go through this? Rises up this cosmic compass. Interestingly, in that book, in the second book, we actually mentioned then that Rose is going to Asia with her friend Lee in order to find game developers. And then when this game company came out of Vietnam, I thought that's amazing, because we had that in the book, not yet knowing how that was going to manifest. I often say now that Deepak Chopra, when he read our book, he endorsed it and saying, this is very prophetic. Well, it's coming true. A lot of things that are there. So, it has a life of its own. And I think that's the role of stewards that also Janice referred to. When you steward a project, when you steward a book, when you steward a game, you need to listen to how it wants to come out into the world. And that means from that listening and being open and being in a partnership relationship with life itself, there may be so many more incredible ways that this can go out in the world that we haven't even considered. We're trusting that process.
Well, I totally agree. And I mean, you mentioned the UN. I just wanted to also mention, COP28 that is happening, in November, December in Dubai. Definitely, that's also interesting. It could be, maybe a pre-launch. Yes. We can talk about that.
Love that.
Creating, avatars of people that people actually admire, like some games have done with certain Norman Freeman, where you can create avatars so that you drive that kind of people to it and so forth. So there's so many different aspects of it. There was one comment, Susan, in the chat, just to mention to you, said, can we contribute? Because you're, of course, fundraising with crypto, which I presume they can.
Yes, absolutely. You can fund. You can contribute also with fiat. So yes, because we're using
is the today, and crypto is
yes, in both ways. It would be really helpful any donations right now, because how we're using this crowdfunding as well is to give a very strong message to potential funders for the bigger capital raise to say humanity wants this game. So by donating, you're not only helping us financially to finance the first prototype with the game development company coming out of Vietnam that we've mentioned. And I know how this is empowering them, because we've been in for many months now in conversation with them, and they're really good people. But also you're really helping us to send a very strong message out there for the bigger capital raise. Yeah. So yes, please, any help you can give would be amazing. We've invested a lot of it, all of it ourselves. So EARTHwise Center is a non-profit, and therefore any of the money that we've made so far from our own courses and books has gone into this to pre-finance everything ourselves. So your help now.
And the crowdfunding campaign, for those who are not in the chat but are listening, you go to earthwisecenter.org/game campaign, or just earthwisecenter.org, and then you'll find the crowdfunding space. Just before I ask another question, I know, Domenic, that you have to leave us quite soon. Is there anything, excuse me, anything that you would like to share before you leave us, sort of on this topic?
Oh, thank you. Just that to Anneloes' point about the crowdfunding, it is important. Fundraising's such a crazy thing. I would call the conventional way it's done painful, frankly. I've done it myself for projects. I've helped other people do it. And, we would love nothing more than for this to be entirely crowdfunded. However, that might be a bit too aspirational. But we are being incredibly mindful about how we go about it. We're not just going to be going to Sequoia Capital for, funding for the game, but unfortunately these things are expensive, especially to get to that state-of-the-art experience that we want, because that's what's going to attract, the larger player group. So yeah, definitely appreciate that and everybody contributing. And, just to say that we really are interested in people's feedback. And so I'm sure there'll be a way for people to do that right after, but I mean that, we're not just saying it. Go give us feedback, because that's cool. And we build our email list. It's like, we mean that, because this is a cooperative process. It's a co-creative process. It must be. Every aspect of what we're doing has to align. It's an inside-out approach. We're not going to be a corporate greed-driven team building a lovely eco-conscious game, right? Like, that doesn't work. If we don't have alignment all the way throughout the project, and if we don't have that engagement from the community from the beginning, it doesn't work, right? So I hope everybody can really become a part of this with us. And I appreciate having me here, but I do have to go, unfortunately. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Domenic, for joining us. How will you approach, what kind of funders or investors are you hoping to pull in? Because I mean, we need to be frank. Impact investing, everybody's still looking, for the money on the buck.
Yes.
We shift that now, which is happening. But what kind of investors or philanthropists are you looking for?
Yeah, well, in our ideal scenario, we are really looking for people who are more like a philanthropist, who are really willing to invest in this because they really see this as an investment of the future, not invest to just make a quick buck or profits or a claim on ownership. Yeah, that's really important. So we're really looking for people who understand the value that this is bringing and the empowerment that it's bringing. But also this is why it's working with the DAO and the blockchain technology in the treasury, we can make the value flows really transparent. So we can really demonstrate with the money that has been contributed towards the game development, how is that being used? How did the collectives of people, the teams working on this, as well as the larger community, vote on those decisions? How was it distributed? What happened after that? What was the value created? How did we account for that? Multi-capital models, of course, but also making tangible, what's often seen as the intangible values and value flow. So I think this is also the opportunities here for philanthropists or impact investors or integral investors who, instead of looking to have a financial return, willing an impact return, is that they help them also to be part of a new model of how do we make that transparent, and also help them then in their sustainability reporting, for example. We've done a lot of work from EARTHwise also with regards to sustainability reporting and sustainability standards. So we can also support for companies, for example, want to make a sponsorship donations. How do you work with this now part of reporting on that, but also how they could be part of the net positive solutions, as we mentioned earlier, for businesses. So really what we are looking for is people who are coming on board with the money, that they see that we are in this together. We're creating an ecosystem. It's not just the old model of, oh, here's a little bit of money and then I can tick a box and this is the return I want. But that we're understanding that we're building a ship here. That's often how I like to look at it. We're building a ship for this new civilization, and that's being in that learning process together. And this case study, I think, is also for example, public-private partnerships and finance, which links into SDG number 17, can be a very, very good case study as well. So yeah, that's kind of our standards there, and our ideal situation. And Stephen might have more to say about this too, because he's very passionate on this.
I know Janice has been putting her hand up so long. Janice, please open the stage. You unmute yourself.
I just wanted to echo what Anneloes said. And from a quantum place, from a scientific place, each and every contribution, it echoes the model of the ecosystem of life. There is no contribution that is too small. So no matter what you give, you become part of the building block of this in the future. So whether you give $5 or $10, you planted a seed to make this happen. Or what I see as potential investors here is the new emerging impact philanthropy, which is about investing not for the quarterly bottom line, which is the Moloch type of investing, but investing focused on achieving social impact, meaningful improvement in the lives of others, and concerns maximizing the funder's tax benefit, honoring a funder's loved one, for instance. I know that I had the opportunity to work with Hazel Henderson for a year before she passed a little bit over a year ago. And she firmly believed that not only people, the average everyday person during COVID was reflecting on who am I, what am I doing here? But investors the same. I think many investors have become tired of the same old model. Many investors are recognizing that they are ancestors as well as investors. So we look forward to bringing more of that type of investor in. And also, this is, as we've been saying, a collaborative model. So anyone who has ideas, anyone who has branding or marketing opportunities, because I'd love to see some of these characters running through life in the marketplace and becoming role models for our youth and as they grow up. So I think there's a lot of potential there as well.
There's definitely a lot of potential. Absolutely. And Stephen, did you want to add something to that?
Well, to amplify what Janice sort of say as well, is that you can look at the whole funding and financing of the venture also in terms of a spiral of life that is going to be triggered. And the whole Constitution is essentially a depiction of a spiral of life. And our financial system currently works in the reverse way. So, if there ever was a legacy building opportunity for philanthropists and impact investors to put their money where their mouth is, this is the place. And then, as Janice highlighted as well, every dollar small contribution counts, because if you look at that as sort of a Fibonacci cycle or spiral of contributions, then you can mobilize very significant funding in a very short period of time. And it would be a small toe in the water. Everybody, that wants to support this. And that is actually the very game of life that we need to play. This will change it, and this will empower ourselves to unblock what is currently quite stuck. Yeah.
I totally agree. And just, I mean, with crowdfunding, with what you've also said, I mean, if one could also, nearly re-engineer that and really become the legacy also within fundraising, where, I mean, if the world could shut down for COVID and we all sort of realize how interconnected we are, then there is that possibility. It is though about how does it reach out and echo out to get that engagement, which I think is part of making the game, and I'm sure with that is it's there. And it's going to be so exciting to also follow that, and also looking sort of with a DAO that can also accelerate that. And then I'm sure also there are a lot of people in the chat who have gamers, and of course after this session I'll be talking with you too, Anneloes, because coming from the industry, this is something I'd love to open up so many sources to, because this is what the world needs. And it's not just, we're not just talking a game, we're actually talking how we become a conduit for humanity into the transition that we're in, to really understand and navigate into a new world that we don't know, and there's no one leader. This is a co-piloted conduit that we're making. So it's and people are becoming more and more conscious. This is what is the topic a lot on conferences and discussions and World Economic Forum, but it needs to be put in action as well. So Anneloes, I'm thinking you with sort of the rounding off word, anything else that you'd like to sort of add in the combination of all this?
Well, first of all, my gratitude to you. I mean, I'm just so thrilled that you ended up being the one moderating this session. Perfect alignment, and everything that you said today articulated and helped to express, as well as my co-panelists here. I'm just immensely grateful. I also see one of our other beautiful stewards, Sherry Hearn, and also in the chat. So I want to thank her, yes, as well. Of course, Jim, will make this possible, Humanity Rising, Ubiquity University, and everyone out here. So first, really want to just express my gratitude to everyone who's believing in this. And what really inspires me is when we're in this conversation about suddenly realizing we can do this, we can make this a possibility, how it's energizing every step of the way. I mean, honestly, this is for me, it's the most challenging and sometimes stretching yes I've ever said yes to, because my background is not as a game developer, right? I'm a systems architect and a storyteller and a communicator and a facilitator. But so when I took this on initially, I was like, oh help, what am I saying yes to? And what I have found is that it's a deeper yes, that you can hear it from so many people here too. So it's our yeses are meeting. It's our yeses to saying, we can shift this. We're part of a new paradigm. We can do this. We can set new standards. Yeah? And that to me is in so doing, in saying yes to life, yes to collective thriving, yes to evolving together, taking our next step. What we're doing, we are then in the game that changes monarch. And just for everyone who's listening here, if already you can be conscious of that, then we're actually then playing the same game. Yeah, we're playing the game of life that helps our species to evolve as the future ancestors of a new and emerging planetary civilization. So with that, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll have another session when the prototype is on board to also explain the mechanics. I mean, because there's so
Absolutely.
many within NFT cards, NFTs, Easter eggs.
Exactly.
in game assets. I mean, this is just to understand when doing a game, and that's why I really applaud you, Anneloes, to start with, because starting a game in sort of the Web3 blockchain space, it requires such a conundrum of different knowledges and expertise and UX developer. I mean, it's so much in that, from the story and really making it happen. So
yes.
For you've already come.
It's huge. I'm on a huge learning curve. Every day I'm learning about that. Right now we're developing all the game loops. I'm working with designers on the game characters and even all the little details in that for the game characters. What are the abilities? What are the capacities? Where you're seeing, for example, with Janet behind us. So I created all of those images together with generative AI, and then I upgraded everything myself, edited it further. So where you see the blue line, that represents our future human potential. That represents the quintessence. So everything, every symbol there has a meaning. So yes, so we're right in the middle of that. So in the next call, we'd love to show you the game loops, and we start playing.
And as someone says here, which I think was very well put, let's not just call this a game, let's call this a movement.
That is it. Exactly. Yes.
So thank you to all of you. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Domenic, who had to leave. And thank you, Anneloes, and to all of your team above all. I mean, all the people who are really making this happen, because this is a group effort. And listen and learn and hear it from here from the start. This is going to become a legacy and a conduit going forward. So please go in and crowdfund, because that is being conscious of also how we contribute and walk the talk, whether it's $5, 1 cent, or whatever currency, or crypto, then at least we're accumulating something that we all want to accumulate. That's why we're actually watching this platform, for example, Humanity Rising. So let's make it happen. And if you want to know more, you go into earthwise.org. Is that correct?
EARTHwiseCenter.org, and center in the English way, CENTRE.org. So yes, thank you so much.
And with that, that was our session for today. So like I usually say, be in awe of life, and hope to see you tomorrow. And please, for this, go in and make a donation, and see you tomorrow. Have a great day, evening, or morning. Thank you so much.